Campaign 2018 is officially not over. There will be a new election in North Carolina's 9th congressional district. The state's election board unanimously voted to hold a new election after allegations of election fraud. In November, Republican Mark Harris defeated Democrat Dan McCready by just under 1,000 votes. McCready had initially conceded, but that was before the allegations surfaced. A contractor for Harris's campaign, Leslie McCrae Dowless, is accused of tampering with ballots. In testimony on Thursday, Harris's son John said he warned his father about Dowless, calling him a shady character. Today, during his own testimony, Mark Harris maintained his innocence, but he also said he believes the election has lost the public trust.
Neither I nor any of the leadership of my campaign were aware of or condoned the improper activities that have been testified to in this hearing. Through the testimony I've listened to over the past 3 days, I believe a new election should be called. It's become clear to me that the public's confidence in the 9th District seat general election has been undermined to an extent that a new election is warranted.
Nick Oxner has been following this story for months and joins me now from Raleigh, North Carolina. He's a chief investigative reporter for our Charlotte affiliate, WBTV. Nick, welcome. Why did the board ultimately come to this decision?
Well, I think most clearly it reached its decision at least so quickly because that's what Mark Harris, the candidate who was fighting to uphold the results, said should happen just hours before they took that unanimous vote. But moreover, in making the motion that that there be a new election, the board's chairman, Bob Cordell, said that he believes that there was enough evidence presented to show that the election outcome may have been changed by the amount of election fraud. But moreover, he said in any event, there was certainly enough taint. That's the second standard at play here, enough taint that would call the election results into question. And because of that, he said there should be a new election. The board, all 5 members, that's 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans, agreed with him, and they voted to have that new election.
Is this unprecedented there in North Carolina?
There have been new elections before, but they're very rare. I certainly don't think there's been a major election like this reheld, certainly not in modern era. And so, this has been very closely watched both by national outlets, but by people around the state to see which standard they would use, to see what ultimately would be the tipping point in that decision. But really, we never reached that point because of Harris's kind of surprising statement today.
And Harris was also asked about his son's testimony from yesterday, where he said he had warned his dad about possible election fraud. Let's listen.
He issued to me, in my take, concerns that he had about 2016, and he issued concerns about what he thought. I knew John had never been down to Bladen County. I knew John had never met other people down there. And so, again, in weighing it out, I did not consider John's to be a warning that this was a problem and could be a real serious potential problem, because I just believed he was overreacting in his comments.
So, Nick, how did the board react to these comments from Harris?
Not really well. In fact, I think they were incredulous at what he was saying. Not long after he said that, again, the chairman, Bob Cordell, said, wait, so you really thought your son wasn't warning you about McCrae Dowless? Ultimately, there was a line of question from another board member that concluded with that board member telling Mark Harris, or asking Mark Harris, if he just didn't believe that McCrae Dowless was committing illegal acts because Harris wanted to win. I don't think anyone was really following Harris's explanation on that.
Do we know at all how Mark Harris felt personally about his son's testimony yesterday?
Yeah, well, last night I spoke with Harris's attorney, David Friedman, and Friedman told me that Harris actually called his son, John, after his testimony yesterday, which is very damning, and his response actually was to tell his son that Harris was proud of him. He reiterated that on the witness stand today as well.
I'm glad to hear that. Now, McCrae Dowless, of course, is the contractor for Harris's campaign at the heart of these ballot tampering allegations. What comes next for Dowless?
Well, certainly Dallas did not testify at the State Board of Elections hearing because the board would not give him criminal immunity, which is something they can do by statute in exchange for his truthful testimony here. So certainly Dallas and his attorneys still very much aware that there's an ongoing criminal investigation into these matters, and we expect that to wrap up anytime in the next month or two.
All right, so now we have a new election. Are we going to have the same candidates? Did Mark Harris indicate if he will rerun?
Well, Harris's lawyer today, after this hearing, wouldn't commit one way or the other. It's worth noting that Harris said, in explaining why he thought there should be a new election, mentioned the fact that he'd been gravely ill in January and had 2 small strokes from which he was still recovering. So, that will clearly be a factor in his decision whether or not he's going to run again. I think Harris's Democrat challenger, Dan McCready, certainly has been expecting a second run, and is gearing up already.
Right, and he did tweet his support for the board's decision. So it looks likely, as you said, that he will probably run again.
Absolutely, although that will raise questions because a second group was implicated throughout this hearing this week called the Bladen County Improvement Association PAC. They're actually aligned with the Democrats, and some of its members were implicated in doing some of the same activity that McCrae Dowless was. So I would expect McCready to have to answer questions about that organization moving forward.
And do you think it's possible we could have 2 completely new candidates?
Anything's possible in this race. That's what we've seen over the last few months. But it seems that, the DCCC, the outside independent expenditure groups, the Democratic Party itself still is lining up behind Dan McCready.
All right, Nick Ochsner, thank you so much for your insight on this.
Thanks for having me.